Okay, so imagine this. Your house burns down. For pretty much anyone, that's a complete tragedy, right? But for one person, it actually sparked this totally radical new vision for how all of us could live. We're talking about a project in Delaware called One Lake Drive. And it's not just one thing. It's like part climate solution, part housing revolution, and get this, part spiritual experiment. It's a wild mix of faith, AI, and some seriously advanced green design. All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll get into the why, the big questions that kicked this whole thing off. Then we'll look at the what, which is the actual physical model they're building. After that, it's the how, the kind of social glue that's meant to hold this community together. And finally, we'll talk about the future, the what's next, and how they plan to take this from just one prototype to a global vision. So, like I mentioned, the story of One Lake Drive doesn't start where you think. It's not in some architect's office or a venture capital pitch meeting. Nope. It all starts with a crisis, a really bad one, a house fire that literally destroyed a family's home and sparked some incredibly profound personal questions. And for the founder, Mudassar Malik, this wasn't just about losing a building. It became a philosophical crisis. It pushed him to ask this really deep question. He's thinking, okay, when AI can read every single holy book in a split second, who's going to be there to teach them what it all means? I mean, just think about that for a second. That question gets right to the core of how we relate to technology and to wisdom itself.
So that thinking led him to his first huge question. Is it even possible to find the common threads in all the world's great religions? Could we take the wisdom from the Bible, the Quran, the Gita, all these sacred texts, and kind of stitch them together into a shared user manual for living? A guide for healing not just ourselves, but the planet too.
Then came the second question, and this one was super practical, born right out of the flames. It basically throws down a challenge to the entire idea of the classic 20th century suburb. Like, how are we supposed to build our communities now, in an age of constant fires, floods, and all this climate craziness? We need something that's not just sustainable, but genuinely resilient, something that can bounce back and even thrive. And the third question, well, it tackles one of the biggest problems we all face, the housing crisis. The question is there a new way to do this? Can we figure out a formula to build affordable, high-density housing, but do it in a way that doesn't strip away people's dignity? It's all about finding that balance between density and, well, humanity. So, okay, you've got these three massive questions, one about AI and wisdom, one about climate change, and one about housing. How in the world do you even begin to answer all of them at once? Well, the project's answer is a single, unified idea they call the Climate Sanctuary. It's a totally new model for building a community, not just the buildings, but the social fabric too, from the ground up. And this isn't just some dreamy, pie-in-the-sky concept. The idea of a climate sanctuary has actually gained real political momentum. It's been officially written into the 2025 Delaware Democratic Party platform. That gives it serious policy clout and, honestly, puts Delaware on the map as a place that's really thinking about the future of development. Now, the physical heart of this whole vision is something they call the Ark of Many Solutions. And it's literally a prototype building that's rising from the ashes of the original home. But this is so much more than a house. It's basically a self-sustaining ecosystem. I mean, picture a building that's fire-resistant, makes its own power, collects its own water, and even grows its own food on the roof. It really is like a modern-day Ark for our crazy climate-changed world. Okay, let's get back to that housing crisis for a second. Think about your typical suburban acre. You might have, 2 or 3 houses on it? Well, this model, which they call a village per acre, uses these cool, modular, prefabricated units, and they manage to fit 256 homes on that same acre. That is an absolutely game-changing level of density. And the best part? They do it without just paving everything over. It's designed to be a vertical village, leaving lots of room for green space. And here's the real kicker. The target price for one of these homes, these climate-resilient, net-zero-ready homes, is about $100,000. I mean, seriously. In today's world with housing costs just going through the roof, that number is nothing short of revolutionary. What they're trying to prove is that we don't have to make a choice between density, sustainability, and affordability. It's possible to have all three. But look, a bunch of cool, high-tech buildings, that's not a community. That's just a housing development. So what makes this a sanctuary? Well, it's the people. It's the shared values that hold them together. And for One Lake Drive, that social operating system, if you will, comes from a really unique interfaith curriculum they've developed. They call it the 7 skills of Scripture, and it's a framework for living that's pulled from all the world's great religions. But it's not about dogma or preaching. It's all about practical, real-world wisdom. So, for example, breath is about mindfulness and being resilient. Gardening is about understanding where your food comes from. Shepherding is about taking ethical care of the land. It's really a curriculum for life, designed to build a real sense of connection and purpose among the residents.
All right, so this is a really cool, one-of-a-kind project in Delaware. But how does it become something more? How does it become a global movement? Let's take a look at their vision for scaling this practical utopia, as they call it, into a whole network of sanctuary suburbs all over the world. This chart right here, it just sums up the whole paradigm shift perfectly. On one side, you've got the traditional suburb, isolating, totally car-dependent, eats up resources like crazy, and super vulnerable to climate change. And on the other side, you have the sanctuary suburb, built for community, walkable, regenerative, and resilient from the ground up. It's a totally different way of thinking. So what's the first step to making this a reality? Money, of course. They're looking for a $7 billion seed investment, and that cash is earmarked to buy the land for their main site and actually finish building that Arc of Many Solutions prototype we talked about. The goal is to turn the blueprint into a living, breathing thing people can see and touch. But the long-term goal is way, way bigger. We're talking about a vision to build a brand worth over $700 million. And how do they get there? The idea is to create a franchise model, something that can be copied and built all over the country. They want to compete with the huge national developers, but by offering something those guys can't, a totally new kind of community that's actually built for the challenges of the 21st century. So when you boil it all down, what's the big takeaway here? One Lake Drive is so much more than a real estate project. It's a really bold experiment in how to live. It's a proof of concept for a completely different kind of future. And it really leaves you with this big, provocative question. As we're all facing these massive, overlapping crises, climate, housing, a search for meaning, could the real answer not be just some new gadget, but this radical blend of ancient wisdom and modern tech? The sanctuary suburb? Well, it might just be a glimpse of what's actually possible.